broadband networks is probably nothing short of unprecedented. And for this industry, I believe that's saying quite a bit. I mean, just stop for a moment and think about it. If you go back to the 1980s, the mobile phone really changed forever how we think about communications. And then 1990s, the internet changed how we think about both communication and commerce. And then in the 2000 decade, broadband took the internet to a completely whole new level. And so here we are now in this decade, and we're combining the internet and the mobile phone, combining two incredible technologies to deliver the mobile internet. And just like all of these prior technologies, the mobile internet is revolutionizing how business now gets done. It's revolutionizing how we socialize, how we get news, how we get entertainment. It's revolutionizing how healthcare, government services, and education are being delivered. So everywhere you look, mobile broadband, it's allowing us to really rethink what's possible. It's scaling rapidly, and it's projected to grow nearly twice as fast as what we experienced with fixed broadband. And because of the people and companies that are all represented here today, the U.S. is leading the mobile broadband revolution around the world. Now, we've all played a role in making the U.S. number one. Network service providers, equipment manufacturers, device makers, app developers, and software designers. There's no one company, there's no one industry or segment that has prospered or met customers' needs without the others. And while we vigorously compete with each other day in and day out, I think we all have to admit we all depend upon each other. But there's something more fundamental to the success story that we've created. And that's been our ability to consistently attract capital into this industry. Capital for networks, capital for R&D, new apps and devices, and completely new business models. Capital is the lifeblood of business. And while the potential of these super fast mobile networks and these great devices and apps, while that may seem sufficient to attract capital to fund all these economic growth engines, we know that it's not enough. We've seen time and time again in this industry, we've seen it over many years, that private investment does not necessarily freely flow to fund infrastructure and innovation when our industry is encumbered with what is well-intended but generally stifling regulation. And historically, there's been a very light regulatory touch on the internet and the wireless industry. And as a result, private sector investment has poured into this industry. And it's poured to the tune of $340 billion over the last 5 years. And as a result, the U.S. leads the world in these two critical areas. So when the rules and the incentives are right, capital investment flows, and it flows very aggressively. New companies are launched, new infrastructure is built, jobs are created, competition intensifies, and innovation flourishes. It's really a fairly simple formula. The results are, I think, they're indisputable. The U.S. is first in 3G subscribers, first in mobile broadband usage, first in mobile apps, and first in emerging wireless devices. Mobile broadband stands to be this decade's economic growth engine. It's going to drive innovation, capital investment, and is driving job creation. And the U.S. is leading the world here. But our future leadership in this area is not a birthright. We've seen America lose its lead in fields that we once dominated, and these are fields like manufacturing and steel and automotive. The challenge in the years ahead is not just to maintain U.S. leadership, but it's to extend our leadership. And momentum is on our side right now, and the stakes are high, and I think the opportunities are incredibly large. As a country, we can't afford to mess this up at this stage. We can't stand for actions that would discourage the extremely high level of investment that we've grown accustomed to. And these are investments that have fueled the U.S. leadership in these vital areas. There are a lot of predictions floating around about the growth potential of mobile broadband, and most of these predictions are fairly impressive. But one thing I know about the communications industry, and we continually experience this, is that we consistently underestimate the growth potential of all new forms of connectivity when they flow. I want you to think about the fixed broadband environment for a moment. 15 years ago, how many of us would have anticipated the adoption of the uses that we see for fixed broadband today? or that new compression technologies and IP would make it possible to deliver multiple high-definition video streams over a copper pair of cable. But here we are. We have more bandwidth, more connected devices, applications and content, and more internet users than probably any of us imagined. Amazon, eBay, Google, these are all companies that 16 years ago they didn't even exist. And today these companies have a combined market cap of $270 billion. And it's because of fixed broadband networks. And they've revolutionized now the way we shop for goods and acquire information. And much of the same thing happened with wireless voice. As competition took hold, prices came down, devices improved, and penetration rates soared. It took almost 2 decades to get to 100 million U.S. wireless subscribers. And just a decade later now, we've nearly tripled that number. In the process, our industry created more than 2.5 million U.S. jobs. 10 years ago, expectations were that eventually 15% of households would be wireless only for voice. Today, we're sitting at about 25%, and a lot of forecasts are calling to a mid-30% range in the next few years. So when I hear projections about mobile broadband growth curves, I'm usually suspicious that we're underestimating the potential. I take all those rosy projections and then think bigger about what's going to happen. Last year, the world economy shrank by around 5%, but the total value of mobile data industry is estimated to have grown by 20%. I think that's a fairly compelling indicator of where all of this is headed. Several years ago, AT&T anticipated that the fixed-line broadband would follow the same path as the fixed-line voice, meaning we expected it to move towards mobility. And we put our money behind that vision, investing significantly to build out our GM-based data network. And today, we're the U.S. mobile broadband leader, and our network carries somewhere around half of all U.S. wireless data traffic. Over the past 3 years alone, wireless data volumes in the U.S. have increased more than 3,000%. That number for AT&T is 5,000%. And there's no doubt data consumption is going to continue to surge as 3G networks get faster and as 4G scales and comes online over the next 3 or 4 years. This is an incredible growth opportunity for the entire industry. But it also, I believe, represents a sizable challenge to our ability to sustain this growth and innovation and continue to grow. Think of how far that we've come as an industry. In just the space of a few years, the handset became the world's first mobile personal computing device. Mobile application downloads increased to more than 2.5 billion last year and has created an entire new industry. We started wirelessly enabling everything from utility meters to personal health care monitors. It includes prescription pill bottles and now the long-anticipated animal collar. And making it all possible, our fast broadband networks are becoming even faster. That's a ton of progress in a very short period of time. And innovation is happening in every single corner of this industry. Every day another new app, a new service, a new device arrives, and it pushes the boundaries just a little bit further. Like all of you, AT&T is constantly working to rethink the limits of what's now possible. As an example, our labs are now creating and they're testing a new wireless network that can blanket a given geographic area and then deliver messages to every device in that area, even if it doesn't know its network address. Now imagine if you had that kind of capability after an earthquake or a hurricane, allowing first responders to very quickly assess where they needed to direct attention. Or think about bringing high-def, high-fidelity video conferencing from the business world right onto the mobile device. We're testing all of this in the labs right now. And when this kind of capability begins to scale, it will revolutionize everything from healthcare and education to how we use social networks. I want to mention another new AT&T offering that we're now moving out of the labs. Earlier today, we announced the AT&T Workbench. And it's an application platform for the iPhone. And it's the first mobile platform that brings full enterprise web applications to the iPhone itself. And it allows businesses to provision, deploy, and control enterprise web applications with both security and reliability. And it's a great addition to the apps world because it makes the iPhone an even more powerful tool for business productivity. Another app we're working on, and this happens to be one of my favorites, it's called UVerse Mobile. It's going to be available to all of our UVerse TV customers. And this mobile app is going to allow you to download and watch TV content on your Wi-Fi enabled device. You'll be able to navigate the AT&T UVerse TV program guide. You'll be able to manage your DVR recordings, download shows, and do this over any Wi-Fi connection on your smartphone. And if you missed or forgot to record a show, which I generally do, this app will allow you to catch up and watch shows when you want to watch them on your mobile phone. I think this is a very exciting step forward for mobile entertainment. And innovations like this are happening throughout the industry. But our long-term success as an industry, it's not based on any one innovation, and it's not based on any one company. Instead, it's based on how everything works together and comes together for the customer. And the biggest challenge, and this is for all of us in this room, is making sure that the model for our industry is one that continues to support significant investment and growth. And it's important to remember that the investment required in this industry is not only large, but the paybacks come over a very extended period of time. And the ability to attract this type of investment going forward, it really rests on three industry pillars, I believe. And the first is the appropriate regulatory model. I've spoken about this. It's one that's stable and produces a light regulatory touch. And if we don't get this one right, the other two pillars, quite frankly, are irrelevant. The second pillar is spectrum. And you just heard the chairman of the FCC speak to this. Limited spectrum simply means limited bandwidth and limited growth. And I am encouraged on that score to hear what the FCC is doing and see their proposal to free up 500 megahertz of new spectrum for mobile broadband. This is a very clear recognition that spectrum is the backbone for this industry, and it's crucial to our ability to deliver the innovation and productivity that the U.S. needs to remain in the lead. Then the third pillar is one that we're all in this room responsible for, and that's continued industry collaboration and innovation, creating even better networks, driving device development, apps, and capabilities. And these three pillars represent the platform for sustained investment and growth for all of us. We get this right, and the U.S. leads the world in productivity and innovation. If we get it wrong, we've squandered our greatest hope for global leadership. I want to be clear. I think every one of us in here has a stake in this. In one way or another, issues like overregulation and spectrum allocation and traffic management impact all of us by creating disincentives toward capital investment. The more we innovate and the more we invest as an industry in our operations, our devices, our networks, then the more jobs we create, the more economic velocity we generate, and the more uses we have for all of our products. I know there are a lot of different viewpoints on a lot of the different public policy details, but we can't disagree on the big picture. What's at stake is growth throughout the industry and continued U.S. leadership in mobile broadband. If we harness the creativity and innovation that made our industry the best industry in the world, we'll do more than stay ahead of these demand curves. We'll ignite the next wave of growth, and we'll deliver the immense potential of mobile broadband. So I thank you for inviting me here this morning, and I hope you have a terrific conference. Thank you very much.